There's a language we only speak when the lights go out. A truth we only tell when the skin is bare, when the walls have fallen, and the body moves in ways the mouth never could. But it's not always pleasure we're speaking. It's not always desire. Sometimes it's desperation. Sometimes it's prayer. Sometimes it's the soul whispering, "This is the only place I feel alive." We don't just crave sex, we crave remembrance. The moment when the mind disappears and the body feels something that finally makes it forget how numb we've become. But look closely, not at the act, at the craving, because it tells you what your spirit is starving for. The ones who crave to dominate are often the ones who feel powerless in life. The ones who crave to be overpowered are often the ones exhausted by always being in control. The ones who crave pain are often trying to feel anything because the pain inside them has gone unnoticed for too long. What you crave in bed is rarely about the body. It's about the wound, the unspoken, the unloved, the unmet need dressed in lace and heat. You crave to be wanted, but what you really long for is worth. You crave to be taken, but what your soul aches for is surrender. You crave to disappear into someone else, but what you're truly seeking is permission to finally be seen. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Nowhere is this more true than in intimacy, because the bed becomes the stage for every story we were too afraid to tell in daylight. We perform passion while hiding the fact that we don't know how to ask for love. We seek kink, cows, friction, not because we're liberated, but because we've been told that our need for tenderness is embarrassing, that our hunger for slowness makes us weak. So we rush, we exaggerate, we mimic arousal, we chase the illusion of closeness without ever letting our souls come near. And still, we leave empty, even when our bodies climax. Our spirit don't, because no orgasm can replace the ache of never being fully met. You can sleep with 100 people, but if you're only bringing your body, you are only grazing the surface of your own divinity. What you truly crave is not friction, it's fusion, not power, but presence. And presence has nothing to do with performance. It is stillness, it is truth, it is letting someone touch you without armor. It is allowing someone in without controlling the story they'll see. But that kind of intimacy terrifies the wounded ego. So we create strategies. We act bolder than we feel. We talk about sex like we've mastered it, when we've barely scratched the surface of what it means to merge. Because to truly merge, you have to bring more than your body. You have to bring your fears, your longings, your God-given wildness that refuses to be tamed for the comfort of shallow men. You have to stop rehearsing the character they told you was sexy and start embodying the one who is holy, who knows that sex isn't something you do. It's something you become. It's the spirit made flesh. It's heaven meeting earth, inside skin and silence. And until you meet yourself there, every partner will be a placeholder, a distraction, a mirror that reflects your longing back to you, but never fills it. Because no lover can fix what you haven't faced. No touch can heal what you refuse to name. No climax will free the soul that still doesn't believe it deserves to be known without conditions. This is not about shame. It's about sacred honesty. About waking up to the fact that you were never just craving sex. You were craving yourself in your full, unfiltered, untamed aliveness. And that aliveness doesn't begin in the bed. It begins in the spirit, in the places you silence, in the truths you censor, in the desires you deny because someone once told you they made you unlovable. But they don't. They make you real. And until you bring the real you to the altar, to the bedroom, to the breathless intimacy you dream of, you will only reenact shadows, not share presence. You will only rehearse arousal, not become awakening. You will only crave, but never merge. So where do you go from here, now that you've seen the truth without its makeup? What do you do with this raw, burning, knowing that what you've been calling passion has often been pattern, that what you thought was freedom was a disguise worn by your most elegant fears? You learn to wait, not the kind of waiting rooted in repression, but the kind born in reverence, a holy pause, a sacred stillness. Because now your body is no longer a bargaining chip, it's a temple, and temples are not rushed. You begin to let silence teach you what lust never could. You stop touching to be validated and start moving from overflow. You let your presence do the work. You let your boundaries speak before your mouth opens. Because now you've remembered, you are not just a body waiting to be adored. You are a soul waiting to be met. And that meeting can't happen in chaos. It can't happen in performance. It can't happen when your worth is still up for debate. You don't just need someone who knows how to touch you. You need someone who has the capacity to witness you. Not just the polished version, not just the confident moments, the quiet places, the scared places, the ones still learning how to stay open without bleeding. And to draw in that kind of love, you must first become it. You stop seducing and start radiating. You stop proving and start embodying. You stop craving to be filled because you've learned to become full on your own. And in this fullness, the game ends. The cycle breaks. The hunger no longer controls you because the one you were starving for has returned. You, the you who doesn't give pieces of your body in exchange for fragments of affection. The you who doesn't perform healing, but lives it. The you who doesn't fear being alone because aloneness has become a garden where the divine meets you in every breath. My soul finds rest in God alone. My salvation comes from Him. Psalm 62:1, you stop running. You stop hunting. You become the space where love feels safe to land. And suddenly, those who once thrilled you now feel noisy. Those who once activated your craving now drain your spirit. Because now you see beyond the surface. You listen with your nervous system. You read people's silence louder than their seduction. And, you can't build a home in someone who doesn't feel like peace. This is when the body stops being a battlefield and starts becoming a sanctuary. Not because you locked it away, but because you finally realized what touches it must be sacred enough to meet your spirit. And once you become a sanctuary, you realize how many altars you once knelt before that were never worthy of your worship. How many hands you let touch you that never asked what they were holding. How many mouths you let speak desire that didn't have the reverence to speak truth. You thought you were choosing intimacy, but you were choosing familiarity because Charles feels like home when peace was never modeled. So now you detox from the noise, from the counterfeit, from the seduction of urgency. You start looking at attraction differently, not through chemistry, but alignment. You ask different questions. Does their energy calm or confuse me? Can they sit in silence without trying to impress? Do they know the difference between hunger and devotion? Because hunger will devour you, but devotion will hold you like a prayer. It will speak to your depths without needing to conquer them. This is what most people miss. They chase fire, but never ask whether that fire builds or burns. And many confuse sparks for substance, conflict for connection, familiar wounding for romantic fate. But when you rise above that trance, you see clearly. Many are not looking for partners. They are looking for emotional dope, a fix, a hit of meaning, a momentary escape from the aching of their unhealed childhood. And you're no longer available to be someone's high. You're no longer interested in being used as a mirror for what someone refuses to face in themselves. You're not a fantasy. You're not a rescue. You are reality in its most sacred form. And that demands responsibility, not only from others, but from you. You become the guardian of your own nervous system. You stop outsourcing your aliveness. You stop leaking sacred energy into places that never had the capacity to honor it. And it's here, in this temple of self-respect, that you realize the most erotic thing you can ever offer another is not your body. It's your presence, your stillness, your self-possession, your refusal to bend into shapes that do not belong to your becoming. You don't flirt with what drains you anymore. You don't chase what doesn't see you. You don't try to earn what should recognize you by vibration alone. Because the frequency of the healed is not loud, it is unmistakable, and it no longer seeks validation. It commands resonance. You are not here to be desired. You are here to be met, not as a body to conquer, but as a universe to walk with, as a temple to build with, as a soul to rise beside. And once you've tasted what it feels like to be met, truly met, without masks, without mirrors, without manipulation, you stop settling for anything less than soul recognition. You stop mistaking attention for affection. You stop confusing proximity with presence. You stop calling it love when it costs you clarity, because now you've become familiar with peace, and peace doesn't perform. Peace doesn't chase. Peace doesn't ask you to split yourself in half just to feel whole beside someone else. You no longer respond to urgency. You listen instead to alignment. You don't say yes because you're lonely. You say yes because you're ready. You don't move because you're afraid to lose them. You stay because you know you won't lose yourself. And in this stillness, a new kind of longing is born, not the ache that comes from emptiness, but the kind that comes from fullness, from the desire to share what has already been found within. You want depth now, not because it sounds poetic, but because surface kills your spirit. You crave connection that humbles you, that mirrors back your divinity without demanding performance. You crave union, not because it validates you, but because it magnifies everything sacred that already lives inside. And so you become discerning, not as a defense, but as a devotion. You learn to feel the room, to watch how energy moves, to sense when something feels off, even when the words are right, because now you understand worlds leap. Chemistry can be trauma in disguise, but the nervous system never lies. And God is not a God of confusion, for God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. 1 Corinthians 14:33. So if your spirit is uneasy, if your intuition feels silenced, if your body tightens when they call it love, it's not love. It's an invitation to remember, to return, to refuse, and you have that right now, to walk away, to protect your temple, to pause until your soul feels safe. You no longer explain your boundaries. They are not restrictions, they are revelations. Each one says, this is how close heaven is allowed to come, quote. And when heaven does come, through another's presence, through the echo of a voice that feels like home, you don't lose yourself to receive it. You expand within it. You share your body not as currency, but as covenant. You let yourself be seen because you no longer fear being known. Because when you carry God within you, you stop begging people to recognize your worth. You simply stand still, and the right ones bow in reverence. And when reverence becomes your rhythm, you stop rushing divine timing. You let love arrive slowly, the way mountains form, the way rivers carve stone, not for speed, but for permanence. This is not a game of conquest anymore. Not about who texts first, who needs less, who holds the upper hand. Because in your world now, there is no war between masculine and feminine. There is only harmony, only union, only the quiet power of two souls who've learned to sit with themselves long enough that they no longer crave completion, only communion. That kind of love doesn't knock you off your axis. It amplifies it. It doesn't make you forget who you are. It makes you more of it. And in the bed, it isn't chaos. It isn't performance. It is prayer. It is the place where you say with every breath, I do not need to be more than I am, and still I am fully wanted. No pretending, no shrinking, no roles to uphold, just presence, naked in every way that matters. And when the act ends, nothing collapses. There is no ache of regret, no inner scream that says, I gave too much again, because nothing was taken, only given, only received, only honored. This is the reality of those who wait, who refine, who choose healing over intensity, who stop auditioning their soul in a world that rewards illusion. And yes, there will be silence. Yes, it will be lonely. Yes, it will feel like loss to walk away from lesser loves that still felt good for a moment. But those moments do not build legacies. They build loops, addictions, emptiness dressed in ecstasy. And you are not here to loop. You are here to build. To walk like covenant is your native language. To touch like every nerve in your body remembers Eden. To kiss like resurrection. To hold like holiness. To love like lightning wrapped in mercy. You are not here to perform for love. You are here to become it, to be it, so deeply, so truthfully, that anyone who comes close enough feels the presence of God before they even hear your name. And when love finally finds you, the kind that sees in silence, that honors without asking, that enters without conquest, you won't feel rescued. You'll feel recognized. There will be no spark of survival in your chest. No anxious rehearsals in your mind, no performance in your posture, just a quiet knowing, a peace that says, this was never about being chosen. This was about remembering I was never lost. Because what meets you now is what mirrors you, not what distracts you, not what dominates you, not what praises you in public, but confuses you in private. It will be steady, not dull, not boring, steady, because your nervous system now rejects volatility, rejects drama disguised as passion. You are done mistaking intensity for intimacy. And this love, it won't make you question your worth. It will affirm it. With every glance, every pause, every moment of undivided presence. Because the one who truly sees you will not just desire your body. They will steward your soul, not as something fragile, but as something sacred. They will not strip you down to feel powerful. They will hold you fully clothed in vulnerability and whisper, you don't have to be perfect here. You just have to be real, Ka. And in that realness, in that bold, trembling authenticity, you will find something deeper than lust, deeper than compatibility, reverence, a mutual choosing that doesn't waver in storms, a love rooted in God, not in games, a love not built on need, but on knowing, let love be genuine, abhor what is evil, hold fast to what is good. Romans 12:9. This is the good now, not the perfect story, not the Instagram fairy tale, but the sacred reality, the slow dance of two sovereign souls who've stopped leaking energy into what does not last. You no longer call in lovers who drain you because you no longer entertain people who can't hold your depth. You no longer prove your value through touch because your silence is now full enough. And in this silence, you hear the whisper again, the one you heard long before the world taught you to perform. You are mine. You are whole. You are holy. And nothing real can ever be lost. Quote, so now love becomes not an escape but a mirror, not a place where you run to forget yourself, but the sacred field where you return to remember. And what you bring to that field is no longer hunger disguised as romance, no longer broken dreams dressed in desire. You bring presence, you bring peace, you bring the parts of yourself that no longer need to be fixed, only witnessed. This is where spirit and body finally shake hands, where your sexuality is no longer fragmented from your faith, where every sigh, every movement becomes a psalm of the embodied, not because you've mastered the divine, but because you've surrendered to it. And in that surrender, something soft returns, not weakness, not passivity, but softness as strength, a softness so rooted in truth, it refuses to be hardened by the world. You let your voice grow quiet again, not to hide, but to listen deeper, because what's sacred rarely shouts. It waits, it watches, it speaks only to those who have ears to hear. And now you hear differently, not with fear, not with old filters, but with discernment forged in solitude. You no longer mistake noise for intimacy. You no longer chase the echo of what once hurt you just to feel familiar. Now you want truth, even when it costs you company, even when it empties your phone and your calendar, because you finally know peace is worth more than presence. Clarity is worth more than comfort. And holiness is worth every mile walked alone. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Matthew 5-8. So you purify, not with rules, but with remembrance, not with shame, but with sovereignty. You begin to walk like your body is an answer to prayer, like your boundaries are psalms, like your silence is scripture. And in this new walk, your energy stops chasing. It starts attracting not attention, not affection, but alignment. The kind of alignment that can't be seduced because it is sourced from something too deep for performance. And so the bed becomes holy again, not because of what happens in it, but because of what no longer happens. No more audition, no more amnesia, no more sacrifices of self in exchange for temporary touch. Just presence, just truth, just the quiet miracle of being met where you no longer need to explain yourself, of being held not for your image, but for your essence, of being touched, like someone finally understands that your soul was never separate from your skin. And so the touch becomes a translation, not of lust, not of conquest, but of understanding. It says, I see where you've been. I feel what you carry. And I am not here to take, I am here to honor Kol. Because when you have tasted the sacred, when your spirit has learned the rhythm of truth, you can no longer pretend that shallow things are deep. You can no longer confuse intensity for intimacy or drama for connection. You become fluent in presence, fluent in energy, fluent in the subtle shifts that reveal everything without a single word being spoken. Now you touch with prayer in your palms. Now you kiss like it's a covenant. Now you enter the sacred space of another with the reverence of one who knows the cost of self-abandonment and refuses to ever pay it again. And when you are touched, you do not flinch, you do not perform. You do not shape-shift to be enough. You simply are, and your being becomes the revelation, the map, the altar, because now your body is not a performance hall. It's a sanctuary, not a place for transaction, but for transcendence. And in this sanctuary, the body and the soul are no longer separate. Desire is no longer a threat. It is a compass. It is what draws two flames together, not to consume each other, but to illuminate. Because real connection doesn't burn you down. It lights you up. It makes you more of who you are, not less. It doesn't ask you to dim your intuition. It doesn't punish your vulnerability. It doesn't weaponize your openness. It holds, it softens, it listens, and in the silence between two breaths, you realize this is the intimacy you were made for, not the fantasy sold in shadows, not the chaos disguised as chemistry, but the still, steady, sovereign truth of being fully known and finally fully safe. And with that safety, true safety, not the illusion of security, tight control, a new kind of freedom awakens in you. Not wildness born of rebellion, but wildness born of being unlocked. You begin to move without calculation, to breathe without bracing, to rest without scanning the room for exits, because now your nervous system is no longer bracing for betrayal. Now your heart isn't scanning for sabotage. Now your body is no longer waiting to be left. There is a stillness to wholeness that no seduction can simulate. And from that stillness, everything flows. You don't try to be magnetic. You simply are. You don't try to keep someone. You trust that what is meant will never require your self-abandonment. And when you enter intimacy now, you're not trying to disappear. You're not using someone else's body as a portal to forget your own pain. You're fully here. And that presence, that rare, unshakable, embodied presence is what makes you unforgettable. You're not unforgettable because of what you do in bed. You're unforgettable because of who you are in bed. Calm, conscious, clear, rooted like a mountain, open like a cathedral, breathing like someone who finally knows. They are no longer a performance to be judged, but a soul to be received. And when someone touches you, they know immediately this is not casual. This is not unconscious. This is not transactional. This is sacred ground. This is a soul in skin. This is divinity dressed in vulnerability. And only those who can carry that weight with reverence will be allowed in, not because you're punishing the unready, but because you're no longer starving. You've stopped feeding on scraps. You've stopped editing yourself into something digestible. You've stopped renting your body to people who haven't earned the right to witness your essence. Because now you walk in alignment, you speak in clarity, you wait in peace, you choose with conviction, and everything that once looked like desire but was actually a disguised cry for worth, it falls away, silently, easily, because it's no longer you. Now what you crave in bed is no longer what your spirit lacks. It is what your spirit echoes, what your spirit blesses, what your spirit remembers, not hunger, not pain, not proof, but presence and peace and home. And so now, you don't just believe it, you embody it. You move through this world, not as a body in search of touch, but as a soul anchored in truth. What you once craved in secrecy, what you once chased in chaos, has been alchemized refined, redeemed, and you are no longer starving. You are saturated, not with noise, but with knowing. You've stopped giving your body to people who haven't even met your spirit. You've stopped calling it chemistry, when it was really just a reenactment of old wounds. You've stopped confusing friction for fire, and now you burn only with purpose. This is what it means to become sovereign, to carry your desires with devotion, to protect your energy like prophecy, to walk so deeply in integrity that even your silence feels like scripture. You don't reach for what's fast. You build what's forever. You don't crave escape. You crave encounter. And you know now there is no climax greater than the feeling of being seen without having to disappear to be loved. So let them call it too much. Let them call it intense. Let them say you've changed. Because you've remembered. You are not here to seduce the world. You are here to shock it with how sacred you've become, with how calmly you now refuse to betray yourself for belonging, with how confidently you walk away from anything that confuses your peace. What you crave in bed is no longer the echo of what was missing. It is the overflow of what's been found. So love now, not with performance, but with presence. Touch now, not to be chosen, but to commune. Wait now, not with longing, but with legacy, because you are no longer someone searching for God in another person's hands. You have become the place where God lives